We're starting the meeting. I'm Marjorie Ray, Town Clerk of Brookline. We are having a hybrid meeting for the Board of Civil Authority and Property Tax Assessment hearing. This hybrid meeting will come to order. Can everyone hear and see me? Yeah, online or offline. So before we get started, we have to take care of some organizational issues. Does anybody have anything they need to add to the agenda? No. Because we didn't do it at our early organizational meeting, the first thing we need to do is elect a chair to preside over hearings and a vice chair to act when the chair is unavailable. Are there any nominations?
I would like to nominate Doug Wellman, if you would accept that.
I would.
Well, I nominate Emily to serve as vice chair.
Okay.
Any other nominations?
No.
All in favor of electing the chair? Let's see, Doug Wellman as the chair.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor of electing Emily as the vice chair?
Aye.
Okay. And okay, so Doug Wellman is elected as chair and Emily as vice chair. I will now turn the meeting over to you, Doug.
Okay, thank you, Marjorie. So.
Do you want to do a little intro?
Yeah, so let's go around the room first and do intros. I'm Doug Wellman. I'm a member of the select board and now the chair of the BCA.
I'm Emily Beer. I'm a member of the select board and now the vice chair of the BCA.
Oliver Ames and property owner, 872 Grassley Road.
Marjorie Ray, town clerk.
I'm Helen Holt, one of the listeners.
Al Coonrod, I work for Nemrick. We did the reappraisal this year and it's down to mine.
Alyssa Schmidt, a lister. Lori Now Martucci, Justice of the Peace. Don Maggio, Justice of the Peace.
And in the back, Mike DeSocio.
Observing chair of the board.
And online we have Guy Kanza.
Guy, Justice of the Peace.
No,
He's just a member.
observing.
So thank you all for attending today. Because this is a hybrid meeting, it will be recorded and placed up on our website for people to view afterwards. All votes will be taken during the meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. We must also take roll call attendance of all members participating virtually and ensure they can hear and be heard. There's no BCA members virtual. We're all here. So everyone here can be hear and be heard. The next thing is for BCA members to take the BCA oath of office. Marjorie, could you administer the oath?
Okay, so this oath is for BCA members. Please raise your right hands and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will well and truly hear and determine all matters at issue between taxpayers and listers submitted for my decision under the pains and penalties of perjury.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie. And
Can I ask one question? Just for like first timer over here. Who are the voting members of the BCA?
The ones we just.
so
All here.
it's myself, Emily, Lori, and Don,
So Mike will not,
and Marjorie.
Mike is
Mike.
recused,
Like,
fully.
fully recused, not voting.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so these three are the listers. And
Oh,
the
yeah,
rest
from the
are
last.
the BC.
So, Oliver, just for your information, the board of civil authority can be composed of the town clerk, the members of the select board, of which Emily and I are the only ones here that are sworn to the board today,
Yeah,
and justices of the peace.
of which we have two.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think we may need to sign a version of the oath. Possibly, we can do that after the meeting. At the file.
Do you have,
I think that's if you're offline, you're online.
Okay, yeah. The script says, let me collect the signatures of those in attendance.
Also, we're gonna be signing the rules of procedure,
Okay.
and that has the oath in it,
Oh, perfect.
okay.
so I think that takes care of it.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so our next order of business is to adopt the rules of procedure. Does everyone have a copy of the rules?
Yes. Got an extra one now.
Yes, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That actually just looks like, the chair and the town clerk need to sign it, so I'm not sure about what Emily is saying with the oaths.
I can look at it at the end if people listen again, and then we'll sign it at the end if we need to.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so have all the board members had a chance to review the rules of procedure?
I have, yes.
I will entertain a motion to adopt the rules of procedure.
I'll move to adopt the rules of procedure that we all received.
I'll second it.
Okay, so any discussion? All in favor of adopting the rules of procedure that you were provided in the mail, please signify by saying aye.
I
Opposed? Okay, the rules of procedure are adopted. Are there any questions about the rules?
I do have one, if we needed to adjourn to a time and place, we would not have to do another agenda, we would do that before the end of. our meeting. I'm looking down here, N7N.
The second meeting is part of this meeting. The process is that we meet today, then we do an inspection. We basically
Right.
adjourn today and then we come back, but it's not a separate
It's
meeting.
not an adjournance, yeah, we suspended.
Okay.
I'm asking. I'm
Okay,
confirming
yeah,
that.
we come back and it's part of this. We don't have to like put up the agendas again or any of that. It's part of this hearing.
Okay, so since this is our first meeting of this BCA, we don't have minutes of past meetings to review. And our only order of business is to hear the tax appeal of Mr. Ames. And Mr. Ames is here today, and the listers are here to represent, or Mr. Conrad, is that Conrad? Yes. I'll butcher your name, sorry about that. Are both here to represent the two sides in the case. Marjorie, could you
Okay,
please
so
swear in?
we need to swear in the listers for the hearing. Let's see.
as a representative of listers, I have to be sworn in at the same time.
I think we actually are swearing in the applicant and the listers. Because it's whoever's giving evidence. So this would be one, two. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so raise your right hands. Under the pains or I don't know if you have to repeat after me.
I don't think so.
Okay, so under the pains and penalties of perjury, do you solemnly swear that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
I do. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, fellow members of the BCA, before we get started, I will ask if any of you have any connection to this property or the people involved in this hearing that might constitute a conflict of interest.
No, I can just. No. No.
Okay. And what about ex parte communications? Has any board member had any conversations with either party or other interested persons about the value of this property before today's hearing?
Yeah.
So I'd now like to ask the listers to introduce the property by describing the property and the present valuation.
Property at 872 Grassy Brook Road, owned by Oliver Ames, is on 82.93 acres. With two separate dwellings, three outbuildings, a solar array, and is currently valued at $1,110,000 on the grand list. Okay.
And Oliver, would you please present your opinion on the valuation and any supporting evidence you may have to contradict that?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just clarify one thing about the gauge? What are the three outbuildings? Specifically?
There's a material shelter, a barn, and an equipment building. One of them, as I remember, is up behind your solar array.
Yeah.
One of them is attached to both of them are attached to your second dwelling, section 2. That's why it would seem that there were two outbuildings. One of them actually has two sections because of different values attributed to.
Which one is the garage, like where the cars go?
We called that a barn, 600 square feet.
Okay. And the material shelter is the one that's connected to it,
Yes.
and then the
I don't know.
equipment is the one up in the upper field.
Yes.
Okay. What does a material shelter mean? Like from a real estate perspective?
A material shelter has no sides, a roof. And varying floors, wood, dirt, concrete, asphalt.
Okay,
It's just to shelter material from.
yeah, it was a cornfield apparently, so that checks out. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Thank you guys for the time. I know it's it starts summer, so I appreciate the time. Given that I came in and did grievance round 1, I don't want to waste any of your time. I submitted what I see you have there. So I just want to check and make sure that we're all on the same page.
I would like you to review everything.
Yeah, but I just would like to hear that, did you guys all review all that? Or is some of this new discussion?
I don't have it.
I don't have it.
Okay, so who has read what I submitted?
I think that this is a hearing, this is your one opportunity to present evidence, so present your full case, don't worry about the.
Right, but I'm curious as to who read this when I submitted it to Marjorie and you circulated it to everyone here.
Circulated, I got it.
You just let me know if you read it.
There's pictures here if you wanna.
Yeah,
I have not.
okay, it's just good to know. Good to know. Here are the 3 copies. This is what I submitted and I saw in the rules. There are obviously more than 3 of you, so well, I think you have.
Make more copies.
I just wanna look at somebody, so share, look at, yeah.
The pictures on
Fall off it.
So for you, we can't rely on anything that is not submitted in this hearing. So if there's something you need us to rely on.
totally. I'm just making sure that I'm tracking between what I was required to submit to the town clerk,
Yeah,
which I did. I'm just telling you that what I submitted to the town clerk is carbon to what I'm giving you now.
got it, thanks.
And you're gonna go over it again.
I'm just gonna read it
Okay,
for
that's
like,
good.
so sorry for the like stilted read but I'll just read through it. So today's date, June 19th, 2025. Grievance appeal. 872 Grassy Brook Road, Brookline, Vermont, 05345. Parcel ID 0000004 021, span number 099-031-10208. Our estimated value against what was assessed is $447,000 and $16. The math behind that is the 2019 purchase price, which is public. Less the 2023 flood damages, which is page 2 of what I provided to you. And then, yeah, I'll just read this to you. So we believe that the recent repeated and historic flooding of our property has not been accounted for in our property value, and that more information needs to be reviewed by the appropriate parties, some of whom are here today, before an accurate appraisal can be delivered. Moreover, the proposed assessment addition of our property as average is incorrect. The property and dwellings are generally in poor condition due to repeated flood damage and age. We also believe that our assessed land value is in error. Please see those additional pages for rationale and data. Our property has historically flooded, and those floods have increased in severity and frequency in recent years, as you all know. In 2011, Tropical Storm Irene damaged, it says here, both dwellings, but I guess we're saying that there are 2 dwellings and 3 outbuildings, so I'll put that into the record. With water on the first floor of each dwelling and in the 2 outbuildings that are not in the upper view. We purchased the property in 2019 after it sat on the market for over a year. Its valid sale price, again public, was reduced. The sale price was reduced in the course of that year to $649,000, which was a loss for the previous owners for the patents. This is 9% less than they paid in 2003. In retrospect, we believe that we overpaid for the property. Our property then had a major flood in the summer of 2023. This caused at least $201,983.95 in damage. Again, page 2. And there's a photo there at the back just to show you the flood. There have also been numerous other floods. Everyone knows about 1927. This property, the original house, is from 1780. So the property is flooded many, many times. The flooding in our valley is predicted to increase in both frequency and severity. Further, the roof of our, I'm going to try to get this right here, garage, which I think is the, correct me here, which one?
Barn.
The barn, and the shed, which is the material shelter. Both basements, both dwellings, and associated infrastructure, think HVAC, generators, etc., as well as our porch, storage area, back deck, and greenhouse have been significantly damaged by storms and floods. All will need to be replaced in the coming years. They've suffered significant water damage. See the photo. Our swimming pool is also destroyed in the 2023 flood. Obviously, the assessment from 18 years ago, the swimming pool is there. We've talked about this. Overall, we do not believe this damage and the overall depreciation of the dwellings have been fully accounted for. Additionally, we believe that the recent non-sales of similar properties have not been accounted for. For example, Misty Air Goods property, if I'm saying that right, at 793 Grassy Brook Road, which has documented flooding and mold and water damage issues from the 2023 flood, has been on and off the market for the past, this is kind of dated now, 12 months, I would say. And she has reduced it again by 9% from her initial listing price and 4% from the price she paid in 2022. So if it were sold today, it would be sold at a loss. It has not sold. Lastly, the proposed appraised land value per acre for our property is $3,970.64. We believe that our land value is significantly lower and comparable to Lester, Kim, and Pam Rink at 341 Greer Road, Brookline, Vermont 05345. Parcel ID 0000003-004, span 099-031-10252. Their proposed appraised land value per acre is $1,020.16. This is a significant difference, and we do not understand the rationale for our proposed appraised land value. I'm now going to go back to the original grievance appeal, which you obviously all have access to and copies of, just to bring in the comparable properties. So I already did Missy Air Goods. I'll also do Christina and Leah Dailies. And Daniel Pickard and Lauren Willis, so I'll read those in, so. Parcel ID and sub 03002-000. That's Christina and Leah Daly's properties across the road from us at 6 Parker Road. Their new value is $634,300. We view their property as extremely comparable to ours outside of the land acreage. Of course, there's a difference there, but in terms of dwellings, outbuildings, they also flood. They flooded in 2023. Very, very comparable, very large difference in assessed value. Then I would go up Parker Road,
So repeat that one more time for me.
which one?
Which one you just.
03002-00 is the parcel ID and sub. The owners are Christina and Leah Daly of 6 Parker Road, just north of here, in Brookline, and their new value is $634,300. Last one I'll add in.
Oliver, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
That's the original grievance, or when you came to discuss it with the lister.
Last thing.
Yeah, can we make sure we get a full copy of that to enter to the?
Yeah, I
for the
sent it to
meeting?
Marjorie.
Yeah, we have a copy here, right? We'll just make that part of the record.
Wait, what is it? I printed out everything in here.
This is round 2, right? So when I did round 1, I did this one. And I sent it to you by email. And I also brought it in. I can give you this, I have a copy of it. Either way. You definitely have it.
Yeah, let us, give
Um,
us a copy.
sure, we can do like a photo copy after, but yeah, this is all round 1, this is good for you to have. Last property is parcel ID and sub 03001-000. This is Daniel Clipgard and Lauren Willis up Parker Road at 78 Parker Road. Their new value is $549,200. They have significantly more acreage than we do. They've also suffered water damage. They have similar square footage. And their new value is less than half of ours. So I want to close by saying, above all, I love this town, love being here. We've had a really tough time since 2023 flood. And the previous owners had a really tough time in 2011. We are a unique property in the town. I understand that this is difficult, flooding is hard to quantify, but it is my belief that the flood damage and flood risk is not reflected in our assessment. I also want to say that I empathize and understand that, because none of us in the room are hydrological engineers, none of us are climate scientists, so we're all working together to try to figure this out. But at the end of the day, I would like to keep this property as a historic property in the town. I would like to keep it as tax base in the tax base. But I do believe there's a scenario, if we can't figure this out, we are gonna end up in a buyout situation in our property. And the average buyout in the state of Vermont, since they've been doing them, is in between $100,000 and $200,000. So you can imagine what that would do to our property tax and the town if we were to go for what we've proposed, what you've assessed down to that buyout. And I would like to put it into the record. And Mike can attest to this. Anyone on the select board at the time can attest to this. We are buyout eligible. So it's not a theory. I've talked to Vermont Emergency Management. We are eligible for a buyout, given our repeated flooding. We are in floodplain. So I just want to close by saying, we want to stay, we want to keep the property taxes at a fair market value. And at the end of the day, I really hope that we can resolve this at the town level. That's my close.
Thank you. Now, would the listers like to respond? Tell us how you came about your assessment.
Certainly. Number one, when we visited the property, we were not invited to go inside and view the condition of the interior. So we limited our condition opinion to what we saw from the outside of the property. The appellant was very good about showing us around the outside of the property. The berm diverting the water flow, which has been added to since purchase, coupled with 120-inch culverts, which are in pretty good shape. We have some pictures of those. Should prevent future flooding, but I think with the rains that we received this year, that's pretty good testament right there. There has been no flooding with all of the rain that we received in what, 15 Saturdays and etc. We've received a lot of rain this year. With the 2011 Irene flooding, I don't know why, but I looked over the records and there was no Board of Abatement appeal, no change in value with the flooding that occurred. And, you know, in looking at the 2023 pictures, yeah, that was significant flooding. So, the three,
Could you repeat? What you just
I'm
said
sorry?
about the board? Could you repeat that about the abatement?
there was no Board of Abatement appeal for tax stress after the 2011 Hurricane Irene flooding for this property.
Can I just clarify something? There was no appraisal done. When was the last appraisal?
2007?
It was the land whole.
So they didn't have an appraisal.
They didn't
After,
request a there was no value.
right, but there was no town, I'm just putting in the record, there was no, unlike now,
Right,
there was no townwide appraisal.
no, they were.
Their assessed value stayed the same,
It did.
And
so just drawing that difference there.
so I could reference a different town. The town of Cavendish had significant flooding 2 years ago. I visited 9 properties under order to the Board of Abatement as their assessor there. And I gave the Board of Abatement my recommendation about devaluing the properties based on the damages that I found there. That's how things generally go when properties are significantly impacted by flooding or a tree falling on a house or et cetera, et cetera. I'm just bringing it. The 3 comparables that were used, none of them are really comparables with regard to, you know, one has significantly more acreage and the acreage spills over into another town. But Clickguard's house, which I reviewed and went inside, the square footage, number one, is less, particularly less when you consider the 2 dwellings on the appellant's property. And number 2, the second floor of Clickguard's house is stripped down to studs. So that wouldn't be considered comparable. The other 2 are not comparable based on acreage and the square footage.
I will-
as well.
Is it okay to have a dialogue, or is it like a whole?
No,
I
I
think so.
should do inside and then bring it up to you.
And lastly, the acreage consideration, Rink's property, the access is deplorable and the contours are much heavier than the property the appellant is defending. There is a driveway to both dwellings on the property. There is no dwelling other than a camp. That, believe me, I've been there. You don't want to drive unless you've got a 4-wheeler.
Sorry, which one's this?
This is the Rink property that was brought into play as far as a comparable for the land values. Other than that, I think most significantly is the fact that I really couldn't develop an opinion of condition based on the fact that I was unable to see the interior of either house. With that, I rest. And you were with me, right?
I
No, you were-
yeah, yeah.
Do we have a copy? I assume in your analysis, you have comps that you use to value this property?
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't, okay. Do you have any, other than these pictures, do you have any documentation we should have on the assessment?
Yes, which will come up during the third part of what the listers have to present. It's under I, ask the listers to present their evaluation of supporting evidence. You will get supporting evidence at that time.
Okay, so this was just, you were responding.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Do any of the board members have any further questions with listers now?
Well, I'm gonna hold some questions until I hear the evidence that part three, yeah.
So, now could the listers present their valuation and the supporting evidence? Sure.
Three values. It's the values.
We're required to
So
get
you don't.
three copies, so
It's for the BCA.
Oh, three copies,
Passes.
we can make more copies if you
Yeah,
like.
oh, so,
Just leave there, I can do that.
of course you can.
Yeah.
Are they copy?
We can share.
Yeah, that's okay. Here,
I'm
take mine.
mark all set the numbers based on what we're receiving, so I'll keep this as a receipt. Yeah,
He's got one.
okay, thank you guys.
You're okay with that? Oliver?
Yeah, I just wanna make sure we're all looking at the same thing.
Okay. So if none of you has looked at a cost sheet before, that's how we develop an opinion of value. In the beginning of the project, making sure that the acreage is correct, the square footage of the dwellings and outbuildings is correct. Developing an opinion of quality and condition at the time of inspection. Then at the end of the project, we put everything on an even playing table with sales in the last 3 years and the percent increase or decrease in a town. By modifying this data with what is called a local multiplier, you'll see it in the middle of the page, midway down. That adjusts the Marshall and Swift values for the time location multiplier.
That the local multiplier is applied to all properties in town.
Every property is exactly 1.4 for a local multiplier, yeah.
Which means.
The data pretty much speaks for itself. It talks of section 1 and section 2, the two different dwellings, the type of siding on the house, the type of roofing on each house, the type of heating in the house, the quality, which is in the upper right hand corner, the condition, which is 2/3 the way down. Section 1 is in average condition. Section 2 is in average condition. With the conditions, a percent depreciation is applied based on the effective age, not the physical age, but the effective age of the house. The effective age of the house is the bones of the house when it was first constructed, as compared to the additions to the house, newer roofing, newer plumbing, newer electrical updates, perhaps additions. So that's why an effective age can differ from an actual rate. If we were to apply for a 1780 house, that would be what? 220, 245 years old. Our program wouldn't even allow us to run that because no house that's 245 years old is gonna be up and standing without at least the roof having been replaced. Just as an explanation to what effective age is. I don't have anything else to add. These pages speak for themselves. The section 1 dwelling is 457,400. Plus the land values based on a land schedule we put in place after 3 years of land sales, not only in the town of Brookline, but in the surrounding towns. The water and septic values are given to us by the state. Those are low averages on what it would cost to put in a new system. The outbuilding values stand on their own. A 50% good means it was considered to be 50% depreciated at the time of the inspection, and that drives the cost per square foot. Does anybody have any questions?
Where's the total? I see 859.
The total is on page 2, section 2, at the bottom. There's a house site and a homestead total. The house site is the first two. Oh, you didn't get a.
Okay, yeah, actually, I want you to.
Here, oh,
Yeah. You guys get a third one? The total, not, well, it's just, yeah. Sorry.
Effective age is at the top of the page,
Okay,
right
Yeah, yeah,
below,
yeah.
right below the quality. Yeah, yeah.
got it.
What's the difference between, is it average and then above average and below average? Are those the scales that you rate
The scales range from salvage
salvage?
to poor, and salvage value, I generally depreciate the building physically by 95%, leaving 5% for copper, timber, anything else that could be salvaged from.
And what's
So
above that?
it goes from salvage to poor, to, to fair, fair average, average, average good, good, very good, and excellent. No building built this year is in excellent condition. It's in average condition for the year built. Average is applied versus effective age. So something that's in average condition with an effective age of 50 is going to have 30% depreciation. Something that's in average condition with an effective age of 20, because it was only built 20 years ago, is going to have a depreciation of 12%. It's a sliding scale.
So fair average would be below average.
Yes,
And the difference of percentages, again, how much?
I don't have that memorized. Between those two, you would have to give me an effect. I would have to plug it into a program to give you an accurate answer.
Okay.
Is that percentage number on here? That what, so we have I see effective date. I see. A listing of average. Do we have would that percentage that's applied be on here somewhere? No.
Yes, it is. It's in the center of the page, 2/3 the way down.
Okay,
See where it says percentage?
percent 30,
That's 30, so there's $196,034 in reduction from cost to rebuild new,
got it,
okay?
thank you.
And you'll also note between section 1 and section 2. Section 2 was built in 2005. So we allowed the effective age to just run because it was built that recently. The effective age is 20 years old, 20, 25, 20 years old. That's how that works.
Got it, okay, and then I see the percent there, 17, got it. Thank you.
So it's always done on costs, not comps. The whole valuation.
Yes, if you have ever looked at a fee appraisal, I'm sure everybody in the room has, they mostly do comparable, things that have sold within the last 6 months. But they strive as hard as they can to get properties with similar acreage, similar quality, similar square footage, and similar attributes. There's a place on a fee appraisal, it's called the grid, where they take their comparables and they add or subtract based on the differences in their comparables. Most good fee appraisals also contain a cost approach. I'm very impressed when I see a cost approach that has an accurate representation of land value based on the sales that the listers record every year and average, and the land cost is there. But in the case of a business, there would also be an income approach evaluated.
So is the land is based on actual sales?
The land is based on the sales reviewed in the last 3 years in this and surrounding time.
Not the building. That
No.
cost of the.
Right.
So I just check in,
Go ahead.
first time seeing this, right, at this level of granularity. Is there an opportunity for me to like discuss this? Cause I know in the inspection, I can only like comment on what you're seeing, like. What happened when and stuff, but do I have an opportunity to go through this with you all? From my perspective, given that-
So now is your opportunity to respond to anything that the listers have presented.
Awesome, I don't know if they walk through anything else.
I did
Said
have
I
a
don't.
question.
I don't know.
Appellant has given us a valuation, which was their purchase price minus the 2023 flood damages. Can you give me your opinion on how that calculation, is that a good way to calculate estimated value?
I'm either not hearing a question or not very much.
Colin's estimated value is their 2019 purchase price minus the flood damages. I'm curious as to your opinion on whether that's a good
I
way
don't
to
know
estimate
anything about
value.
flood damages. I was given more information.
No,
I did not visually note any flood
I'm
damage.
not asking you to comment on the number, just that process. So like the purchase price minus flood damage amount, would that be a normal way you guys would estimate value of a parcel?
No.
Okay.
Parcels are all at a reappraisal. It's entirely the objective to put every parcel in town as close to fair market value as possible. Based on the sales in the last 3 years, what you could get if you were to sell your property. That's what a reappraisal is all about. That's what the state's looking for. To set an education tax rate with a common level of appraisal. That's what we try and do.
Got it.
And yet nothing's based on actual sales, it's all based on cost to bid.
No. As I said, we represent actual sales as accurately as possible by adjusting the time location modifier, that 1.4. And then we look after we say, okay, that is where it's at, but then we look at every property again. We do a second go round. And sometimes we'll say, well, this property really can't sell for $350,000. There's a property down where it sold for 302. We lower the quality a percent. We lower the condition a percent. We try and make everything as close to fair market value as we can by doing that process.
So that would mean you'd have to have comps in property or. Right?
There's a book in the other room that is sales for the last 3 years. I can,
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
is
sure.
it per property? I don't need to see it, I'm just saying, is that how it's done? It's like, it's first it's cost, and then it's after you sort of have all the data, then you look at it. From the market standpoint.
Yes.
So comps for each property,
well,
in a way,
yeah, in a way, yes.
okay. And so what were the comps for this property?
We didn't look at specific comps for property. We look at the town-wide sales as a whole. What did the sales as a whole generate as far as a cost increase, a brand list increase in the last 3 years?
Okay.
I can't remember where we're at, 68%?
87%.
87%. Well, it's been a long time since the reappraisal.
I don't know if it's time for me to ask a couple of questions.
Well, let's
Let's
let
say,
Oliver
okay.
go and then the board.
Let's see, maybe I'll ask the same question.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like with deep and like sincere respect, like I don't mean any of this in a combative way. There's a like debate element to this. Is my perspective that there was zero accounting for flooding. And what he said, what I'm seeing here, he just said he didn't visually note any flood damage on the outside of the property. You can now look at the photo and understand that like there is water all over the outside of the property. If you go and look at the base of our siding, it's rotting. And we had to replace siding as a part of our repair. So it's my first contention that there, if you look at this, if you look like to your question, Emily, like in my piece, I go from like purchase price, kind of like the little PEMDAS formula, like price and then kind of adjustments down to a fair market value or up in most cases to a fair market value, given that this hasn't been done in 18 years. But there is no element in that equation that accounts for not either the flood damage looking back or the flood risk looking forward. So when I was here last time, we have the highest flood risk in the entire town. It is, you can see it on Zillow, you can see it on Redfin. You guys could have incorporated it because it's public information. We have a 9 out of 10 on First Street flood score. So that's just not accounted for. And I would say that is by far the like topic here. Everything else is a little bit of like nits and like come on into the house. I think like a little go up, look, go down, we'll go through it. I have big comments to make about the basement, but that's my main point to the BCA is the the flood risk, and again, it goes to my like earlier statement. This is new. It makes sense that the 1.4 applies to the whole town and that there are no comps locally. If you're an average non-flooding property in town. But if you're one of the oranges, and they're like, what, 5 or 6 properties, anyone on the hazard mitigation board, like, knows it's just, we got big rain, you kind of look at a few different houses. Along the way, we're in the oranges and we got treated like an apple. And I get that from my perspective, what else are you gonna do? Like you just said, like you don't know anything about flood damage. That's why page 2, there is your like actual dollars of damage that was done to the property. It's like, imagine you have a vehicle and it sustains like a car accident. You would never say that it increased in value. That's the dwellings. The land is a separate topic. I think the land value is way too high. And can I go through my little points and authorities now? And then I hope we don't have to take too much time, but what I would say first is. The 2011 thing that you said doesn't make sense to me, because there was no reappraisal. So they basically, I also know that they didn't have flood insurance. So for them, they were just screwed. They got flooded and all they did was build that berm, to what you're saying about the berm. They thought the berm would work. We thought the berm would work. To your point about no rain this year.
How are those pictures?
Yeah, you can see in the photo on page 3, you can see the berm to the left of the farmhouse. It's there. There's water all around the house. Like the berm does not make sense to me, because we flooded. Yes, we went out and tried to fix up the berm, but we can't build it higher than the town road, so it's fixed. It can't, as these storms get bigger, it can only be that height. So the berm is not going to protect us. It's a fool me once, fool me twice thing. Like, I get it with Irene. We were hopeful. We took the plunge, hence us saying we overpaid. We were fooled twice, like on the property in 2023. So I want to address that. There's nothing that's changed in our flood risk score. We've had our flood insurance company come out and been like, or can we have a lower insurance premium? They raised our insurance premium after 2023 with the burn accounted for. They came and looked at it. So they don't believe it's going to work. They increased our premium. So I just want to cover that. Then going into the actual property and the comparables, it's my perspective that our land value is massively over. I think it should be the same in Bluegrass. Ours isn't accessible. Our contour lines go up to Windmill Hill. Have you tried to walk up that trail? It's pretty steep, especially the first part, which is where our property is. And with the rain that you have, it is so waterlogged and like inaccessible. You couldn't do anything up there except maybe some timber, which we're in current use. That's the best value we get from it, is that we're in current use. We can't do anything with it. We've had people out to be like, could we build up there and get out of the floodplain? They've been like, no, this is subsiding. So the land value outside of on the slope is overvalued, and the land value in the floodplain should be at the lowest value in the town.
I wanted to ask you about how much land did you have to sacrifice for that floodplain with the berm of your acreage?
I mean, it's hard to say, but guys land, I would have to get back to you, but I would say somewhere in like the 10 acres.
7, 8.
Yeah, 7, 8, 10.
Acres.
Yeah, it's just
Couldn't build
it's
anything in
just a
that.
reservoir.
Yeah, you wouldn't build anything in that
Yeah,
area.
you could. No one in their right mind would even build it for you. Anyone who knows anything about our town. Then going to what you said about the click guard, we had to strip our house bare to try to avoid mold. And you'll see when you come in, there's still many parts of our house that are stripped down and studs. So if that is what influenced your valuation of the click guard so much, wait until you see the inside of our house. Next, the condition does not make sense to me. The affected age does not make sense to me. I'm looking at the picture and you're telling me that a farmhouse built in 1780 is effectively 50 years old. Can you explain that to me? A property that's repeatedly flooded, has suffered damage over and over and over again. You're viewing it as if it was built in 1975.
This is not a point of the hearing where I can respond.
Okay, well, I would just put that to you, that's 200 years off. So, it's just, the house would have to be torn down to be rebuilt, everything is twisted in the house. There are footers and pilings in the house that are made of black locust trees.
Mhm.
This stuff is, we'll see the basement, so that's the first specific point I make to you. Our basement floods anytime it rains, so the idea that basement one for $31,000 and basement two is worth $15,000, like, you wouldn't put a piece of paper down there, let alone something valuable. So I know you didn't come in, but I would just say, I wanna highlight some things, because I know I can't argue this in the inspection. The basements are liabilities, they are not assets. Next, I would say. Not using comparables is a big flag to me. I would really encourage BCA to look at the other properties that flood. Like the Dailies. The Dailies did not go up in the same way that we did. They flooded. I don't understand that. Our houses are comparable in age, but ours have flooded so much more than they have. And the culvert that the town nicely supported actually has fixed their flooding, but they are to the west, Grassy Brook Road, at a completely different grade. Love burn, so we are below their property at much greater risk. Otherwise, I think I really wanna ask about the site improvement, $45,000. How does that work?
This is not a part of the hearing that I'm allowed to respond to.
Can you and the BCA explain to me what that means? From like a procedure perspective?
Yes, and both on that. I
Yeah,
described that.
One second.
You should be able to.
Jabba jabba. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I would just say we have made no water or sewer improvements since then. There have been none since the last appraisal, so.
can you tell me what you're looking at?
Page
Site
one,
improvements on
site
page one.
improvements,
There have been no improvements to the water.
it's
sewer.
a typical.
We have 45, we have ancient wells. And the sewer's been in there since like the 20th century.
I think the thing to do is that he can bring up the questions, and then if, to the extent that we also want to know, then we'll ask.
I think that's replacement value.
But it says improvements,
Okay.
so I'm just clarifying with BCA, there have been no site improvements, so just looking at the basements and the site improvements, those don't feel accurate to me. The condition is not average. It's nice to hear the different gradations, but when you see the property, we have interior flood lines in our property. Like if we were to go to sell our house, you would say, what's that like white scar all the way around all the timber pieces that we can't take out of the house? And by Vermont law now, you have to disclose if you flooded, which is a good thing. So we would say that's flooding. So you would never say that that was average. The average property in town does not flood, does not have flood damage. So I think we're in the poor fair realm. We've tried our best in areas that are on the second floor to make it nice, because it doesn't flood. But we don't put anything below 2 or 3 feet. You'll see it when you come in, like, we don't keep anything of value on the first floor, because you never know when the next hurricane is coming. Then I think. I have a couple of other thoughts, but I've said a lot. Are there any questions from the BCA?
Hi, my question is, how was your first meeting different from today's meeting with, first you met with the listers for the first grievance
Yeah.
system?
I would say a couple of things. I'm sorry to quote you guys, but it's good for records. We met, you'll get a copy of this, which is the first thing. So I basically do the same thing I did here. I read this. So it has the comparables, reason for grievance, their math, our math. This is the first time I'm seeing their math is a big difference. And the first time I'm seeing it at a granular level. Going back to that hearing, because it doesn't sound like you've read through all of that. You said when you came out to our house, every single property verbatim is going up, which was a huge flag to me. Huge flag. That just means you're coming out with that apples. The whole town's going up, which tells me you're not taking into account the flood damage. You're just coming in and you're saying 1.4. And it's like, you gotta think through the flooding and the flood risk and flood damage, how that impacts market value, how that impacts the damages. And Missy is a good example of how it impacts marketability. Her house is not sold. I feel very deeply for her. She's dealing with massive mold problems. We most likely have mold in our house. The other way that it was different is, Alyssa, again, I'm sorry to quote you, but you said that we are not in the floodplain. And then that's why I put in the photo here, like, it's not debatable for in the floodplain. So again, it all comes back to just one simple thing that I want to cooperate with you guys on, which is the flooding is new. How to value it is hard. Like, that's why I gave you hard numbers. For flood damage, those are real dollars of damage. I wish I had the flood damage from the patents before, but like I said, they sadly weren't insured. And I think that's in many reasons why they sold. Because they took a literal bath. And then they took a bath again when they sold it for less than they paid for it to us. And again, we paid $649 in 2019. That's not that long ago. The last appraisal was 18 years ago. So our comparable to ourselves is what we paid. Not like you have something to work off of, which is why I started with that price. It's 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So I just want to be clear, like I'm really trying to set the BCA up so that we can keep it at the town level, to do some math, to try to recognize that the property value has, especially from a dwelling perspective, decreased. And that was the existential challenge we had in the last hearing, is everything from their side is it's going up. And for us, damage is a negative, risk is a negative. So that was the main difference, but we didn't get into this level of details, more detail on how I arrived at 447.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about the 447. You subtracted what the cost of your repairs were, but doing the repairs maintained the value, so.
Right, and I didn't get to get into this. We had multiple, I can share it, but we can also show you in the inspection. There were so many things that we could not repair, and it was nice that the insurance company on the flood insurance claim, I hope you never have to.
No,
They don't care after the fact if you repair it or not. They come in, a guy showed up in like a Sprinter van, 2 guys, and they come and they do their thing, and the basic concept is if the patents had a flood plain, that would have created a prior loss. So let's say, to make a like examples always help. Let's say they had insurance. If they had replaced their floorboards, they would have been paid out, right? Because it flooded on the floor. Then if they had replaced them, and then we 10 years later had filed a claim saying we also had our floor like need to be replaced. They're like, we already paid you for that, but it was the previous owner. But because we didn't have a prior loss, we were in much better shape because there was nothing had been paid out before. But going forward, no one on our property will be able to get much from a floodplain because we filed. So basically anything that we replaced, they can't get paid out for. And I would say of that fundage, in terms of what we actually did with it, we moved infrastructure up to the first floor to get it out of the flooding basement. We didn't fix the house. We put took our hot water heater and put it on the first floor because the basement floods like anytime we get an inch of rain. So we didn't like fix the siding, fix the house, fix all the things that are twisting and rotting. We moved infrastructure with the vast majority of that. I'll show you in the inspection where we replaced parts of the structure and the insulation. It's in Emily's office. It's a bit on the siding. We took some of that money to like get rid of the destroyed swimming pool. I also don't see in the accounting here, you say site improvements. Where is the reduction from the swimming pool being destroyed? I see negative numbers here, but I don't see anything for when it was appraised 18 years ago, there's a swimming pool and now there's,
I think there just was no assessment of the swimming pool.
but there was 18 years ago.
But it's not included on yours, so if there was a swimming pool included, then it would have raised the assessment from that.
Okay, but then that goes,
Yeah,
that's fair,
yeah.
that's totally fair, but that goes to site improvements, so.
Yeah.
You haven't.
But
But
they-
back to the water and sewer, there's been no site improvements, everything's been failing to maintain the status quo.
Okay, yeah, I think we need to move on a little bit here.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions for the listers. So the average grade, was that based a lot on, you didn't have access to the property? Do you have like a standard, if you can't go in and inspect stuff, do you grade it at a certain level?
Who's the chair here?
I am,
Do I have permission to answer that question?
yes, sir.
Because you're supposed to be directing to the appellant and then we're done. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I just want to make sure it's okay with the board.
Anybody?
Okay. Okay, so now I'm listening again. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the average grade of the property, of the buildings, is that based partially on it because you didn't have access to it to see?
Absolutely correct. And I stated that a couple of times. I didn't see what was inside.
Can I just respond that when you walked around the house and I told you that there was flood damage and that a swimming pool had been destroyed, that caused you to, as you said, take 0 external flood damage into account with your assessment.
The external flood damage is, I mean, when I walked around the house, I noted for a 50-year effective age, it was an average condition. If the siding had all been new, if everything around the exterior looked new and undamaged, it probably would have been in good condition. That's where that comes into play.
So you base,
And can I go on to once again describe to you what site improvements are? So for your edification, is that allowed?
Go ahead.
Site improvements are state issued values for water and septic. Do you have a well on the property?
of course it will.
Do you have 2 separate septic systems for the one house and the other house? No. That was a question I asked you in situ. And I
We have one
thought
septic well.
that can be addressed by the BCA then.
Yeah,
That is something,
I think the thing that I would just ask you is foundation. You keep, when we talk about conditions, saying siding. That seems to be the repeat, like you basically do the effective age of the siding. Almost the majority of us in town have old historic properties have stone foundations. And they're in the earth. So when you have a flooding event, we had stones fall out of our foundation. And so I just want to put into the record, do you take into account the foundation damage?
one of the questions I asked you in situ again was, do you have a dirt or a concrete floor in your basement? If you look at the cost sheet, it does say dirt floor in the basement.
I'm talking about
That,
the foundation.
that detracts, that's part of your foundation values.
Yeah, that's
the fact that
a
it's
big, that's a big consideration, because we are hearing from like. You guys know Chris Parker, like folks, we tried to have the house like lifted and stuff. Our foundation has been compromised by this.
So I'd see under finished basement, dirt floor, and then negative numbers, so that
Correct,
be
that's what I'm
taken
referring
off
to.
the value, okay. I see 2 basements here, I see basement, stone, finished basement, dirt floor. Please let me understand why there's 2 lines per basement.
To, go ahead.
Sorry.
Sure.
If in the basement there was an apartment. There would be second basement and it would say basement apartment. Square foot amount. And a value, and it would increase the value by about $50,000. This is a dirt floor basement. So that dirt floor. With the stone foundation decreases. Otherwise, with this Marshall Swift program. A stone basement and a concrete basement 8-inch are exactly the same value. That's how we account for a stone basement commanding less value. Cost per square foot.
I would just say one last thing, which is the model that you use, it does not have a factor for flooding. That's the bottom line. So that's the thing that I hope you take away from this, is you'll do more and more appraisals. We need to get to a state, whether it's through the BCA or the state, or on the front end of the process with the appraisers, that you can bring in a flooding factor. Because how can you do your job without it? It's like, they can't get into this system.
Okay, go ahead. I had one question I should have asked earlier when you talked about the land tables. So the land tables are based on land sales of different size properties, so, and, but how does like accessibility and grade play into the land table?
Very heavily.
Okay,
And accessibility, the Rig property is total land valued at 0.4. Because there is no access. And again, ATV, I brought my Subaru up there, big mistake, I didn't come off the hill road. The contours of the land are a big factor. The contours of the backland are less of a factor. The appellant's property has two site values because he's got two different dwellings on the property. Those site values command a lot higher. That's part of the house site, the first 2 acres. That commands a lot more value because they've been improved. They've got water, they've got septic, they've got access. Your residual land, so to speak, or raw land, if the raw land has 800 feet of road frontage, I'm going to consider that a lot differently than if it's landlocked. You know, well, that 800 feet of road frontage is going to allow you to potentially build something. If it's landlocked, you're going to have a right of way included in a deed or an easement. That value is a lot less.
Doug, I would also add, this goes to your question, Doug. You have $165,000 if you take the building lot and additional building lot in the first page and the land prices. Would anyone here in the BCA pay $165,000 to be in the water, that photo? Like that's just what I'm trying to highlight, like that's the photo.
Yeah, I think.
Every single one of those acres, the 4 of them are in that photo. So you're saying that being in that water is worth $165,000 to the like reasonable person buying land in Vermont?
And
I'm just putting that out there.
if I can respond to that. FEMA and ANR, Agency of Natural Resources, do not have that flood zone. That was the only thing I had to go on.
It's also been updated and not true.
Yeah,
That's not true.
I've worked with ANR, I've worked with the hydrolysis, I met with the AOT about that area, back in August of last year, in reviewing what, the issue. So I'm surprised you're saying they're outdated, they need to be brought up to date. In my 10 years or 12 years of being here in town, this is the first time that there has been a resident who has challenged their tax bill. And so this is all learning for all of us. But then the process involves several steps, and we're at a new step here, but were there any other residents besides Oliver that had a question about their taxes this year that they needed to have it reviewed and that you might have?
Anybody else agree?
Yes,
Yeah, we had about a dozen and a half grievances.
so there was about 18 grievances. On average, did any of them get a reduction?
Some did. But
Not all
part
of
of
them.
it is correction in the details, structures.
So there were some that were able to be, what would make it easier to solve before coming to this level of meeting? Why wasn't
May I
there
answer that?
something that could
And
have been
I
done
have
earlier?
this answer so happily. We had pre-grievance meetings. During pre-grievance meetings, I can go back and revisit a site. Oliver could have had me come in his house. And I could have said, oh, look at this condition. Or I could have said, look at these pictures during pre-grievances. I'm gonna lower your site value because.
Oh, wait, hold on, just the backfield. No, I'm agreeing with you. I thought pre-grievance was how the process worked.
No, pre-grievance, if you go back to that brochure that you were mails. It's
Not
described.
everybody got,
Yeah, I don't think I got that.
there were residents who did not get that.
We mailed out one to each and every one.
I can tell you people who didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't think I got that, just to put that out there. I've done what I thought was the required stuff.
Oh, Pre-grievances, I mean, it's so relaxed. It's a question and answer session. It allows me to go back to a property, do a re-inspection if I wasn't inside the house. It allows me to make judgment values on things that you're bringing to my attention that weren't brought to my attention before. That's how, yeah. And your address is
872.
872 Grassy Brook?
Yeah,
And that's where you received this brochure.
I received, I'm with Dot, I received,
everybody got one.
like, I received this.
Girl Scouts on early Tuesday.
Well,
I didn't get this.
Pre-grievance,
yeah,
that's where the pre-grievance.
also, to like,
So you didn't go to a pre-grievance? Because
No.
you didn't, that's the thing.
There is, so there is informational.
Okay, yeah,
yeah, but I thought that was informational.
that's what that is.
Once you see the value of
Yeah.
that brochure, if I was saying, geez.
But I got this as the grievance, the pre-grievance, yeah, I don't know, I'm really sorry, I did not, I mean, it's what Dot was saying. I've never done this before, sounds like the town hasn't done it in
But
20
this is the change of appraisal notice, that went out to everybody.
I thought I had,
Got it.
I thought I had to do it in written form.
Only for the grievance side.
That you did.
Wait, so there was an
Yeah.
information hearing, then there was a grievance
There was-
hearing, and
yeah,
then,
right.
and you did both of those.
But I
Yes.
heard talking to Dailies that they were informational, that did not to me, I also did not receive that in the mail, like in that clear way.
Well, then where's that have your address on it?
Yes, but the thing that I'm telling.
So you didn't get it in the mail? Carrie,
So it's-
Sally said they did not get one. They came down, they.
I did not understand that, yeah, first of all, I was like, is it required? It said like an opportunity, I was like, okay, I'm definitely grieving, so I like focused on the grievance. I just like, I'm very sorry, I did not understand that anything could be changed, because here. It says like review data and new value, I did not understand that one. Like, and I don't know if anyone
Well,
else did.
I'm sorry to
understand.
come to the point of the BCA, but there will be a site inspection.
Yeah.
You know,
We're gonna do
like,
that
I
separately?
would just want to make sure that the BCA puts your property as close to what they consider to be fair market value for all of your attributes, less.
Totally.
Yeah.
I also, I said this to you when you came out. I'm pretty scarred from the flood insurance process of having people pour over our house, that I'm sort of like. Is this necessary? I would like to make this as like unstressful as possible. Nothing has changed for the positive on the inside. But yeah, it's a learning experience. Hopefully we
Can I ask
can resolve.
Marjorie a question of protocol, or Doug, if you can answer? So like, let's say we go, we do a site inspection and we come back. Is there some point where the BCA sits together in executive session to discuss this, and then we come out and then we rule on this, and then what the rule of the BCA holds for, it gets applied across?
I don't think it's executive session. I think it's pretty clearly said in here. Did you think
There is a deliberative session, so we will. Recess this meeting, we will do a site inspection, we will get a site inspection report that we have to put together. We reconvene, we invite the inspection committee to present that report. We get final questions
Right,
from the
okay.
BCA,
And so
final comments from listers and the appellant, and then we close the hearing and enter deliberative session.
And then after the deliberative session, the BCA comes back with a
We write it,
statement.
You
That's
issue
fair.
decision and
make a decision on it deliberative session.
and we will issue a decision and
Issue
then
a written, and then that value, whatever value you guys come back to is will stay as it is for once they're walking from this now until the next steps.
And can you just walk me through the process after that? Cause then there's a whole other thing in here, and again, I wanna make sure I totally understand this and like every step. Then it's, if that, like, if I appeal that, that's a 30-day
yeah, there's a.
process, and I submit a third letter to you now. That's, it either goes to the county or the Superior Court.
It says
There
after
is
the
an
hearing.
appeals process that involved the dual leg there. So, unless any other board members have questions.
It seems like we have a kind of an issue of fact, which is whether or not the home site is in a floodplain. It is, hypothetically, if it is in a floodplain, can you tell me what information you use to determine that and then how it affects the result? Just in the abstract.
Mr. Chairman, am I allowed to answer?
Yes.
That would impact an opinion of site grade value.
Okay. And what,
Um,
is that a FEMA map?
we do have. Alyssa did come up with a floodplain map. Again, it could be outdated. But showing that it's not, the property's not in a flood.
So there's
flood zone.
also one where there is. Like if there is a floodplain, it's the blue. And this is. Their property there. Stan sent us the LiDAR of this area, the valley, and showing the.
Yeah, the issue is we can't rely on anything that's not put forth as evidence to us and we can't go look it up ourselves.
Well, I was just.
Yeah, this
I
is.
was just saying,
You
if
can
you're
make
not,
copies for it.
to your point, like. Dot, I would really encourage you, can. First of all, we have introduced it and you have a contest here, I think, between the two sides. I am of the deep factual belief that we are in the floodplain. You can also use your own subjective view, like you don't even have to look at the map.
Oh, but you can have those.
But it would be a terrible outcome here to end up going to the next level of this. Because we can't decide here or in the process of that follows with the inspection that we are in the floodplain like that. That's a miss on all of us.
Yeah,
The
no,
information
that's-
is,
It is a.
Look, Jim, where did you, these are on the FEMA website, the floodplain maps or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
And
the
Emily, I would-
Agency for National Resources, that's where they're from.
yeah, I would just say, and then like it's not burden is not the property owner. To provide things in the public.
The burden is on you to get past the presumption that the lister's value is correct.
That's her data.
But I'm talking about physical, public
That's.
information.
Yeah.
So this board can't go and look up floodplains themselves, we're not allowed to do that. Or we have to rely on evidence that's given to us. It's just, that's the nature of this kind of hearing, is that we're not supposed to be fact finders, we're supposed to evaluate.
Well, I think it's
So-
challenging that you have someone on the BCA saying that the property is in the floodplain.
Okay, and
We'll have to figure that out.
you have anything else, Emily?
Let me just see.
Thanks. Oh, can I get some more?
I think I would just,
You said you could-
I don't know where the property is, frankly, so which one it is.
It's a dark map.
Yeah, is that it?
Yeah, so I'm just.
Yeah. So is this
Dot, you have anything else?
this one?
Yeah,
Okay, so that.
Well. Since we're gonna be able to ask additional questions after site visit and maybe I just wanna clarify how people went through the pre-BCA meeting and the fact that they were able to get reductions without having a site visit occur by this conversation, so I'm a little confused.
this is so old that, no, this is so old. This is,
Yeah.
there's agricultural land back here, like 20 years, that's why I'm confused. This doesn't,
Do you know which
Those are not.
yeah, this is all outdated.
Yesterday.
These parcels,
Lori,
this parcel is part of
anything
our
else?
parcel and we have here.
No, I mean,
I can adjust if
I
there's
think.
questions about
Thank
the
you.
process, cause I.
That's
You
sort of,
did do the process,
that's
yeah.
sort of
You went
irrelevant
through
to
it.
what
Yes,
we're
right,
doing right now, so.
So,
So our next,
Can I keep these?
yeah,
Okay.
next thing we have to do is, establish a committee for site visit. So, at least 3 of us to do that. Does anyone want to do the site visit? Yeah,
I would be happy to, yeah.
Dot,
Should we all?
can we all?
We can all do it.
Yeah, Okay, so,
Minimum of three.
minimum of three, so, do
And the
we
list-
just set a date now for that, or?
Sorry, date for what?
To come.
Just wait, is there-
Yeah, I can do anytime starting in July.
And do we have to do it within 30 days, right? Is that
Yeah,
what I
within
read?
30 days.
Yeah.
That's when we have to have our second hearing, so we'll have to do the inspection and the second hearing of,
And then the second.
or maybe it's 30 days from the.
20
report.
So,
I think it's.
It says recess
From-
not more than 30 days. We have to do
From
an
the
inspection
hearing.
before 30 days.
Yeah.
From which date?
I think from the
From
today.
Okay.
Like we have to meet again in 30 days, so we have to do the inspection before the 30 days are up.
so, Oliver, you said anytime in July,
Yeah, I'm just looking
so
at my
like right
calendar.
at, near the beginning of July, not on the fourth.
Yeah, right after the
Not on,
fourth.
not on the fourth, yeah.
That's tough week for me, but. The fourth.
I have good availability, so why don't I just tell you the dates that don't work for me and then you don't have to leave me. I can't do the fourth. I can do the afternoon of the, no, that's not a good idea. I can do any date starting the second, not the fourth. Through July. Up until it's my birthday, and that's the 25th. So is there any way we can do between the second?
It has to be
and
before
25th?
July 19th.
So between the second and the 19th minus the fourth?
What is
We
the
need
seventh?
time to write up our findings and stuff, so we need.
So why couldn't we do this week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, anytime.
Or this week?
I can do the 7th.
With the
About
week of the
seven.
7th, what works for the board? Anybody have any
Be flexible on the side.
Yeah, any time that week. It's good.
8th?
Tuesday meeting.
What works for you, Doug?
What?
Are you coming?
Yeah,
Okay, what, do you have a
So-
preference?
afternoon of the 8th,
Afternoon of the 8th?
yeah, that's fine.
Late afternoon, it's for work purposes. How is that good for you all?
Afternoon of the 8th. Yeah,
2 or 3, somewhere around there.
I'll put a block on my calendar. Okay.
And how about Al? Al's gonna be doing without doing statistics, right, at the site visit?
No, it's just, I think.
It's just a
we just
BCA.
go.
The
There you go.
the listers can go on the site visit if they're invited by the applicant. The appellant, excuse me, I don't.
I would prefer to have a BCA just for objectivity and fresh eyes. I feel like that would be.
That answers that. So 2 o'clock on the 8th,
Yes.
Do we meet at the
Yeah.
property?
Yeah.
yes. Marjorie, do we have to formally appoint the site visit committee?
I didn't see that anywhere.
Okay.
Check, just so. Check our box.
Because we're all.
Yeah,
I think this is if you're doing multiple meetings, like. There'd normally be like a meeting after a meeting after a meeting, so they'd be appointing like small groups to do things.
Do we just have
I
one?
think we just officially say we're all appointing,
okay.
we're all going for,
Yeah.
okay, so for the record, that's clear. We have a time and date set.
And then when should we recess to?
That's the time and date. 2 p.m., July 8th,
Well, then when are we doing the inspection?
July, 2 p.m.
So then when
July
do we recess to? We recess the meeting, when are we
Till-
having the meeting again before July 19th?
8th. At the end of the July 8th site visit.
No, we-
will-
We need time to write up the argument.
No,
inspection.
to set the next meeting, that was what Doc was saying.
Oh, you wanna pick,
The date that the report that we reconvene before the 19th, we decide that on July 8th.
oh, you wanna decide that day?
I mean, it says it right in here on M, recess to a date and time, so I feel like.
PM,
To accept
July
it.
8th.
Okay,
I don't think
No.
that's.
no, that's for the next meeting, we have to meet.
We should plan the meeting now. We should recess to the meeting and set it right now, not at our little meeting for BCA, because everybody.
Oh, so the site visit is not part of the BCA process.
Okay, so the next thing that needs to happen is we go to the property, we do the inspection, then we have to sort of write up our notes about the inspection. Then we meet again, so we're gonna recess from this meeting to the time that we meet again. And we'll all be at that meeting.
Okay, I was confused. I thought we were gonna recess until July 8th, 2 p.m. where we will reconvene to do a site inspection. And then we would determine that meeting, then we would recess until we met to.
It's,
But
I think the confusion is just technically you could have an inspection committee of just 3 of us that would go, so it's not, we're not technically recessing this hearing.
okay, so
So
that's
we're not,
deciding after
No.
at the site inspection.
no, and we won't
Okay,
take,
just gathering
we won't be taking new evidence from anybody, it's just
Okay.
a site inspection.
Makes sense.
And then we have to meet again before the 19th.
So we should.
So,
Yeah, let's do that. You know.
Such, put that.
We'll do the 15th. Week later.
We can do that, we'll just have to issue a written report at some point. I think or
that gives us a week to do the written report, whoever's gonna write
We
the
get-
report.
we
Oh.
actually have 15 days, so that works. Yeah, let's set it for the 15th, and then if something happens, we still have a few days to make it. In case there's a catastrophe and the
And
meeting is canceled, we have a few more days before the deadline.
Would it make a difference that, because I wouldn't be able to attend that day?
Oh, you should, okay, we should be a day you can attend.
Can
We
you
could do it in the
some-
evening, because Doug works.
Correct, I can do it in the evening.
Could we do it at like 5 p.m. on the 15th?
No, is
Yeah.
that early, late
That's,
enough for you?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
What about you?
Oh, I have to attend?
It's, you
Oh.
should attend the second.
What's the day? Sorry.
On July 15th at 5 p.m.
Yeah, that worked for me.
So that everybody's
Let's-
clear, if you could please look at page 2 and sort of look at the process.
Yeah.
So we've appointed an inspection committee of, who's gonna be all of the 5 BCA members. We're gonna recess to this date, July 15th at 5 p.m. And then please be aware of what's gonna happen at that meeting. We're gonna reopen a hearing. We're gonna have the inspection committee present its report. So there will be final questions from the BCA, the applicant, the listers. So just, I wanna make sure everybody knows that that's what happens.
Okay. And then after that, within 15 days, we have to issue a decision in writing.
Does that July 15th date work for you guys?
Yeah.
Right now.
Okay.
But when you discuss, we're done with me, we're gonna recess this meeting until 5 p.m. and meeting recess.
So thanks for coming today. We're gonna go into recess until 5 p.m. on July 15th.
Here at,
Here at the town hall again.
Same Zoom link.
Can we use
I
the
think we
same
can
one?
use the same- Oh, no, maybe not. I'll look into if we can use the same one.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Marjorie. We are in recess. Thank you all.
thank you.
Thanks for actually, those of you I have not met before.
Yes.
I just.
That air conditioner works real good in there, huh? Yeah.
Thanks, guys. You.
See you all over there.
Have a good one, Oliver.